My beloved child, wait, before your mind tries to understand this too quickly, just stay here for a moment, because something has already begun shifting, and you can feel it, can't you? Not loudly, not dramatically, but in that quiet, almost unnoticeable way, like a truth gently knocking from within. There is something you've sensed for a long time, something that never fully left your awareness, even when you tried to move forward, even when you told yourself it was over. And yet, it lingered, not as pain, but as a question. Why did it feel unfinished? Why did it feel like something was left unsaid, like a chapter that was never truly closed? Pause here, feel that. Because what you are about to understand isn't sudden, it has been building, silently, behind moments you didn't even notice. They didn't leave the way you think they did. No, that's not the full story. There was a hesitation inside them, a quiet resistance, something that kept pulling them back toward you, even when everything around them was pushing them away. And that inner pull, it never faded. It only grew quieter, deeper, more difficult to ignore. And here is where everything begins to shift. Because what they are feeling now is not confusion anymore. It is clarity. But clarity doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives like this, soft, undeniable, and impossible to escape. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt someone's presence, even when they were not physically there? Not just memories, not just thoughts, but something deeper, like a connection that refuses to break? That's not coincidence. That is what has been happening on their side too. And they truly tried to silence it. They distracted themselves. They convinced themselves that time would change things. That distance would make it easier. But instead, something unexpected happened. The more they tried to move away, the more they started seeing you, not just in memories, but in realizations. Little things began to remind them, not in a painful way, but in a meaningful way. A sentence they heard. A moment they experienced. A quiet realization late at night. And suddenly, it wasn't about missing you anymore. It became about understanding you. And that is a completely different kind of awareness. Don't skip this part, because this is where the truth begins to unfold. They started to see what they couldn't see before. Not because you changed, but because they did. Growth has a strange way of revealing what once felt invisible. And now, they are facing something they can no longer ignore. A truth that has been waiting patiently. They always wanted to stay. Yes, even in the moments when it seemed like they chose otherwise. Even when their actions didn't reflect it. Even when silence made it feel like they had moved on. There was a part of them that never agreed with leaving, but something held them back. Not because of you, and not because the connection wasn't real. It was something internal, something they didn't yet understand at the time. A fear, not loud, not obvious, but present. A fear of fully stepping into something that felt too deep, too meaningful, too real. Because real connections don't just bring comfort. They also bring reflection. And sometimes, reflection can feel overwhelming when someone isn't ready to face themselves. So they stepped back, not to lose you, but because they didn't yet know how to hold something that mattered this much. Take a breath here. Because this part is important. They are no longer in that same place. Something inside them has shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily, quietly, until one day, they realized something that changed everything. They realized it was never about finding something better. It was about understanding what they already had. And once that realization settles in, it doesn't leave. It stays. It grows. It becomes impossible to ignore. And now, they are standing at a moment they cannot avoid anymore. A moment where silence is no longer enough. A moment where the truth must be spoken. But here is the part that might surprise you. They are not rushing. Because this isn't impulsive. This is something they have been preparing themselves for, without even realizing it. Every thought, every realization, every quiet moment of reflection has been leading them here, to this exact point, where they finally feel ready. Not just to speak, but to be honest, completely honest. And that kind of honesty doesn't come from pressure. It comes from understanding. Stay with this feeling. Because what's about to unfold next is not just about what they will say. It's about why they couldn't say it before. And once you understand that, everything you thought you knew will begin to look different, just a little longer. Because something important is waiting for you in what comes next. So instead of overwhelming you, they've been giving you space to grow into the version of yourself that can fully recognize them. And this is where things become almost unexpected. Their silence is not distance. It's patience. Their calmness is not disinterest. It's certainty. They are waiting for the moment when your awareness catches up with what they already feel. And that moment is getting closer. You might start noticing small things now. A familiar energy that feels comforting without explanation. A conversation that lingers longer than usual. A presence that feels steady, not overwhelming, not confusing, just right. And here's a deeper question for you. What if the love you've been searching for was never meant to arrive loudly? What if it was always meant to enter your life in a way that feels natural, almost effortless, like something that was always meant to be there? Stay a little longer with this thought. Because the more you become aware of this shift, the more you'll begin to see them differently. The same person, but with a new understanding. And suddenly, things that once felt ordinary will start to feel meaningful. Moments that seemed small will begin to carry weight. And that's when realization begins. Not as a sudden shock, but as a quiet knowing. Before you move forward, there's something I want you to do, gently. If this feeling resonates with you, if something inside you is starting to connect these unseen dots, you can share your thoughts below. Sometimes, expressing what you feel makes the picture clearer. And if you choose to stay connected to this journey, you already know what to do. Now listen closely. Because what comes next isn't just about recognition. It's about the reason why this person had to remain unexpected for so long, and what is about to change between you in a way neither of you can ignore. Wait, before your mind tries to figure it all out, just feel this for a second. Something is about to become visible, not outside first, but inside you. Because the reason this person remained unexpected was never about hiding them from you. It was about revealing you to yourself. Yes, that's the part most people never see. You were becoming someone new, quietly, gradually, in ways you didn't even notice. Your standards changed, your energy shifted, your understanding of love deepened. And while all of this was happening, the version of you that would recognize them was still forming. So if they had stepped forward earlier, you might have misunderstood them. You might have questioned what was actually meant for you. Or worse, you might have walked away from something real, thinking it was ordinary. Pause. Let that settle. Because now everything is aligning at once. Your awareness, their readiness, the timing between both of you. And this is where the moment begins to turn. You'll start noticing it in subtle ways first. a feeling that something familiar is becoming meaningful, a shift in how you see someone you've known, or someone who has quietly stayed consistent around you. It won't be dramatic. It will be undeniable, like a quiet realization that says, "This was always here. I just didn't see it before." And here's the deeper truth. They never needed to become someone else to reach you. They were simply waiting for you to see them clearly. And now, that clarity is beginning to rise. You might feel a strange mix of emotions: curiosity, calm, even a little disbelief. Because this doesn't follow the story you once imagined. But that's exactly why it's real. Because what is meant for you doesn't need to match your expectations. It needs to match your truth. Stay with me. Because something even more powerful is happening beneath the surface. This connection is not built on illusion. It's built on alignment. The kind where both people grow toward each other, without forcing it, without chasing, without losing themselves. And when that kind of connection reveals itself, it doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like peace. A steady, grounded feeling that quietly says, "You're safe here." And that feeling is rare. You've experienced moments of excitement before. Moments that felt intense, unpredictable, maybe even overwhelming. But this is different. This is something that doesn't fade when the moment passes. It stays. It deepens. It becomes stronger the more you understand it. And now, you're standing at the edge of that realization, not fully inside it yet, but close enough to feel that something real is waiting. So don't rush this. Don't try to label it too quickly. Let it unfold. Because the moment you fully recognize who this person is, everything will shift. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way that feels like your entire path just makes sense. And when that happens, you won't wonder why they were unexpected. You'll understand why they had to be, because only then could you truly see them for who they are, and more importantly, for what they are becoming with you. Hold on. Something is settling into place now. Can you feel it? Not as a loud realization, but as a quiet certainty beginning to rise from within you. Because now, it's no longer about who this person is. It's about what happens next. And this is where everything gently, but powerfully, shifts. The space between you and them is no longer what it used to be. Something invisible has changed. The distance feels smaller, the connection feels clearer, and the moments you share, no matter how simple, start carrying a deeper meaning. You may notice it in the way conversations flow, in the way silence between you no longer feels empty, but full, in the way their presence begins to feel familiar, not new, not sudden, but like something your soul already understands. Pause. Because this is the moment where recognition turns into acceptance. And acceptance is where everything begins to transform. They may start showing more of themselves now. Not all at once, not in a way that overwhelms you, but enough for you to see them, their intentions, their consistency, their quiet effort to be present in your life. And suddenly, the pieces begin to connect. The patience you once questioned, now feels meaningful. The calmness you once overlooked, now feels comforting. The presence you once underestimated, now feels irreplaceable. This is how real connection reveals itself, not by forcing a reaction, but by becoming impossible to ignore. And here's something even deeper. They feel this shift too. They sense that you're beginning to see them differently, that your awareness is catching up to what they've known for a while. And because of that, they begin to move closer, not in a rushed or overwhelming way, but with a quiet confidence that says, now is the time. Stay with this. Because this next part matters more than you think. You might feel a moment of hesitation. A small voice inside asking, why didn't I see this before? But don't let that thought pull you away, because everything happened exactly when it needed to. You were not late. You were not unaware. You were simply becoming ready. And now, you are. This is your turning point. The moment where you stop searching outside and start recognizing what has been aligning toward you all along. So instead of questioning it, allow it. Instead of overthinking, feel it. Because what is unfolding now is not something you need to chase. It's something you are stepping into, naturally, effortlessly, as if your path has been guiding you here this entire time. Before you move forward, take a second. If this moment is speaking to you, if something inside you feels seen, understood, or awakened, you can share that feeling. Let it be heard. And if you want to stay connected to moments like this, you already know the simple way to do that. Now listen. Because what comes next is not just about connection anymore. It's about the moment where this bond becomes undeniable. Where both of you step into the same awareness at the same time. And when that happens, there will be no confusion left, only clarity, only truth, and a quiet, powerful beginning that neither of you will ever want to walk away from. Just when you think you understand what's happening, something deeper begins to unfold. Not around you, but between you. Because now, this connection is no longer quiet in the same way. It's still calm, still grounded, but there's a new energy rising within it. A presence that feels more certain, more real, more undeniable. And this is where everything crosses a threshold. You may notice it in a single moment. A look that lingers a little longer than before. A conversation that suddenly feels more open, more honest. Or even a silence that speaks louder than words ever could. Pause. Because these are not small things. These are signals, not forced, not planned, but naturally emerging, as if something inside both of you has decided it's time to stop holding back. And here's the truth that changes everything. They are no longer just waiting for you to recognize them. They are beginning to show you, not with grand gestures, but with consistency, with presence, with a quiet kind of intention that doesn't need to be explained, only felt. And suddenly, the connection that once felt subtle begins to feel steady, reliable, real. You might feel it as a shift in your own energy too. A sense of calm replacing uncertainty. A sense of clarity replacing doubt. As if something inside you is finally saying, this is not something to question anymore. Stay with this moment. Because this is where your role becomes just as important as theirs. You are no longer just observing. You are part of this unfolding now. The way you respond, the way you allow this connection to grow, the way you trust what you feel. All of it begins to shape what comes next. And this is where many people hesitate, not because something is wrong, but because something is real. And real things can feel unfamiliar at first, because they don't follow the patterns you're used to. They don't bring confusion. They don't create distance. They don't leave you wondering where you stand. Instead, they bring a quiet clarity that can almost feel surprising. Because for once, you don't have to chase answers. You don't have to overthink every detail. You don't have to question your worth within the connection. You simply feel secure. And that feeling is the sign you've been moving toward all along. But here's something even more powerful. They feel it too. That same sense of calm. that same sense of rightness. And because of that, they begin to move with more certainty, closer, not just physically or emotionally, but in intention, in direction, in purpose. You may start to notice it clearly now, the way they include you in their future thoughts, the way their words carry meaning, not just emotion, the way their presence feels like something you can rely on. And that's when it becomes undeniable. This is not a temporary connection. This is not something passing through your life. This is something building, something forming, something that is quietly, but powerfully, becoming permanent. Take a breath here. Because the realization is almost complete. You're no longer wondering who this person is. You're beginning to understand what they are to you, and more importantly, what you are becoming together. But don't rush to define it just yet. Let it continue to unfold, because what's coming next is the moment where everything moves from feeling into knowing, where unspoken understanding turns into clear expression. And when that moment arrives, it won't feel like a surprise anymore. It will feel like something you've been ready for all along. And just when everything feels steady, something profound begins to surface. Not as a disruption, but as a revelation. Because now, what was once unspoken can no longer remain hidden in silence. Feel this. There is a moment approaching, subtle, yet powerful, where the truth between you both begins to express itself. Not dramatically, not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that feels natural, almost inevitable. As if the connection itself has reached a point where it wants to be seen clearly. You may notice it in the way they speak to you now. There's more depth in their words, more intention behind their presence. Even the smallest gestures begin to carry meaning, like quiet confirmations of something real. Pause. Because this is where everything becomes undeniable. The uncertainty that once surrounded this connection begins to dissolve. The questions that once lingered in your mind start to fade, and in their place, a quiet knowing begins to rise, not something you force, but something you recognize. And here's the truth you were slowly being guided toward. This person was never meant to arrive as a surprise that shocks you. They were meant to reveal themselves in a way that feels right. In a way that allows your heart to open, without fear, without doubt, without hesitation. And now, you're stepping into that space. A space where clarity replaces confusion, where presence replaces distance, where intention becomes visible. Stay here with me. Because something even more meaningful is happening beneath the surface. This connection is beginning to take form in the real world. Not just as a feeling, but as a direction. You may start to notice conversations shifting toward the future, not in a forced or heavy way, but in a natural, flowing rhythm. Plans, ideas, shared visions that quietly include both of you. And this is where the realization deepens. They are not just present in your life, they are building with you, step by step, moment by moment, intention by intention. And suddenly, everything starts to make sense. Why they appeared the way they did. Why the timing felt unusual. Why the connection grew slowly instead of instantly. It was never meant to be rushed. It was meant to be real. Take a breath. Because this is where your awareness fully aligns with what has been unfolding all along. You see them now. Not as someone unexpected, but as someone who fits into your life in a way that feels natural, grounded, true, and more importantly, you begin to see yourself differently too, more open, more certain, more ready, and that readiness is what allows this connection to move forward, not with confusion, but with clarity, not with hesitation, but with trust. And here's the final shift that is quietly taking place. Both of you are stepping into the same understanding at the same time. No more waiting, no more wondering, just a shared awareness that says, "This is real. Stay with this feeling." Because what comes next is not just the continuation of a connection. It is the beginning of something lasting, something stable, something that doesn't need to prove itself, because it simply is. And when that moment fully arrives, you won't need to search for answers anymore. You won't need to question what this means. You'll just know that the person you never expected was always the one meant to walk beside you, into everything that's about to unfold. And now, everything slows down for a reason. Not because the journey is stopping, but because something sacred is settling into place. Feel this shift. It's no longer about discovering the connection. It's about living inside it. Because what once felt like a quiet unfolding has now become a steady reality between you. No confusion, no chasing, no wondering where you stand. Just a calm, grounded presence that continues to grow stronger with every shared moment. Pause here. Because this is where most people expect something dramatic to happen. A big declaration, a sudden change, something loud enough to confirm everything. But this connection doesn't move that way. It deepens, instead of rushing. It strengthens, instead of proving. And that's exactly why it lasts. You may begin to notice how natural everything feels now. How easy it is to be around them. How conversations don't feel forced, and silence doesn't feel uncomfortable. It's as if something within both of you has finally aligned. And here's what makes this moment even more powerful. They are no longer holding back. Not in small ways, not in subtle hints, but in a quiet, confident openness. You'll feel it in the way they show up. Consistently, clearly, without hesitation, not because they suddenly changed, but because they've reached the point where there's nothing left to hide. And this is where the truth becomes fully visible. They have chosen you, not as an idea, not as a possibility, but as a reality they are ready to build. Stay with this. Because your response to this moment shapes everything that follows. You might feel a deep sense of peace, a calm certainty that replaces every doubt you once had. And within that calm, a realization begins to form. This is what I've been moving toward. But along with that realization, there may also be a quiet question. Am I ready to receive this fully? Not because something is missing, but because something real requires you to open in a way you may not have before. And this is where your transformation completes itself. You are no longer the version of yourself that questioned every connection. You are no longer the version that hesitated at the edge of something meaningful. You are now someone who can recognize what is real, and allow it to grow. Take a breath here. Because this moment is not about perfection. It's about presence. Being fully here, in what is unfolding, without trying to control it. And as you do that, the connection becomes even stronger. Not because of effort, but because of alignment. Two people moving in the same direction, with the same understanding, at the same time. And here's where everything becomes clear. The person you never expected was never meant to fit into your old vision of love. They were meant to expand it, to show you a version of connection that feels deeper, steadier, more real than anything you imagined before. And now, you're not just seeing them, you're choosing them, just as they chose you. Stay for just a moment longer. Because what comes next is not a beginning. And not an ending, but something even more meaningful. It's the moment where this connection steps into its true form. Where intention turns into commitment. Where feeling turns into something lasting. And when that moment arrives, you won't need confirmation from anywhere else, because everything within you will already know. This is the path you were always meant to walk, together. And just when everything feels complete, something even deeper begins to emerge. Not as a new chapter, but as a realization that what you've stepped into is only the beginning. Feel this carefully. Because this moment is different. It's no longer about discovering them. It's no longer about understanding the connection. It's about becoming one direction together. There's a quiet expansion happening now. Not loud, not overwhelming, but steady, intentional, real. You may notice it in the way your future starts to feel shared. Not discussed in detail yet, but felt. A sense that your paths are no longer separate lines. They are slowly merging into one. Pause. Because this is where the truth becomes undeniable in a way you can't ignore. This person isn't just aligned with you emotionally. They are aligned with your direction, your growth, your timing, and most importantly, your vision. That's why everything feels so natural. Because you're not trying to fit into each other's lives. You're building something that already fits. And here's what changes everything now. The connection begins to move beyond feeling, into quiet action. You'll see it in small, meaningful ways. The way they include you in decisions. The way they consider your presence in their plans. The way their words begin to carry a future, not just a moment. And suddenly, something becomes clear. They are not just here for now. They are here for what's ahead. Stay with this. Because this is the point where many people try to rush, to define everything, to secure everything. But this connection doesn't need to be forced into shape. It's already forming itself, naturally. And the more you allow it, the stronger it becomes. You might feel a deep sense of calm now, not the kind that fades, but the kind that stays, a grounded certainty that quietly tells you, you don't need to search anymore. Take a breath. Because this is the moment where trust replaces every remaining doubt. Trust in them, trust in yourself, trust in what is unfolding between you. And as that trust settles in, the connection reaches a new level, not just emotional, not just mental, but real. Something you can stand on, something you can grow within, something that feels like a foundation, not a question. And here's the final realization that changes everything. The reason this person was unexpected was never to surprise you. It was to bring you something better than what you expected, something more aligned, more stable, more true, because what you imagined before was based on who you were then, but what you are receiving now matches who you have become. Pause here. Let that truth sink in, because this is where everything comes full circle. You see them clearly, you feel the connection deeply. And you understand the timing completely. There is nothing left to question, nothing left to chase, only something to continue, together. Stay just a little longer. Because this final thought is for you. The person who wants to marry you was never meant to arrive as a perfect idea. They were meant to arrive as a perfect alignment. And now that you've reached this point, there's only one thing left to do. Walk forward, not alone, but side by side, into a future that was quietly preparing for you, long before you ever saw it. And just when it feels like everything has been revealed, listen closely, because there is one final layer unfolding now. Not outside, but within the space you both share. This is where connection turns into something even more powerful. Commitment, not the kind that is spoken quickly, but the kind that forms silently, and then becomes unshakable. Feel this. There is a quiet moment approaching, so simple that it might almost pass unnoticed, yet it carries everything within it. A look, a sentence, a pause where both of you understand something, without needing to explain it. Pause here. Because this is the moment where both paths stop running parallel and become one. No more distance. No more almost. No more wondering if this is real, because now, it is. You may notice how natural it feels. No pressure, no urgency, just a calm, grounded certainty that says, this is where I belong. And in that certainty, something shifts permanently. They are no longer just someone in your life. They become part of your direction, your decisions, your future, and you. You become the same for them. Stay with this feeling. Because this is what true alignment looks like. Two people not trying to complete each other, but choosing to walk together, fully as they are. And here's something even deeper. There is no fear here. No need to hold back. No need to protect yourself from uncertainty, because what stands between you now is built on understanding, on patience, on everything that was quietly forming from the very beginning. And now, it has taken shape. Take a breath. Because this is where many people look back and finally understand why things didn't work before, why certain paths didn't align, why certain people couldn't stay. It was never random. It was always making space for this, for something that doesn't come and go, something that doesn't confuse you, something that doesn't leave you searching for answers, but instead gives you a sense of direction, a sense of home, within another person's presence. Pause. Because this is the realization that changes everything. You were not waiting for someone perfect. You were becoming ready for someone real. And now, they are here, not as a surprise anymore, but as a truth you fully recognize. And this truth doesn't need validation. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need to prove itself, because you feel it, clearly, calmly, completely. Stay for just a moment longer. Because this is where everything settles, where the journey you've been on finally meets the path you're meant to walk together. No more searching, no more waiting, just a quiet, powerful knowing that says, this is it. And as you step forward from here, there is nothing to figure out anymore, only something to live, something to grow, something to build, side by side, into a future that no longer feels uncertain, but certain, in the most peaceful way you've ever known. And now, everything becomes still. Not empty, not silent, but complete in a way that doesn't need to announce itself. Feel this carefully. Because this is the moment where the journey stops feeling like a journey, and starts feeling like a home you finally arrived in. No more searching, no more wondering, just a quiet presence beside you that feels right. Pause. Let that sink in, because what you are experiencing now is not excitement that fades. It's a steady knowing that stays, the kind that doesn't rush forward, but doesn't step back either. It simply exists, strong, grounded, and real. And this is where the final truth reveals itself. The person who wants to marry you was never meant to be someone you chase. They were meant to be someone you recognize, someone whose presence feels natural, whose intentions feel clear, whose connection feels like something that was always meant to find you. Stay with this, because this realization carries something deeper than words. It carries peace, the kind of peace that doesn't come from having everything figured out, but from knowing you're no longer lost. And here's what changes everything now. You are not stepping into something uncertain. You are stepping into something aligned. A connection that doesn't need constant questioning. A path that doesn't need constant correction. A future that doesn't feel distant, but already beginning. You may notice how everything around you starts to feel different. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Your perspective, your understanding, your ability to see what truly matters. And in that clarity, you begin to understand the reason behind everything. Why they were unexpected. Why the connection unfolded slowly. Why nothing felt forced. It was never meant to be rushed. It was meant to be real enough to last. Take a breath here, because this is the moment where everything comes full circle. The questions that once filled your mind no longer feel necessary. The doubts that once held you back no longer have a place. All that remains is a quiet certainty that feels stronger than anything you've known before. And here's the most powerful part of all. This is not the end of something. It's the beginning of something that doesn't need to end. A connection that continues to grow. Not because it has to, but because it naturally will. Stay for one last moment, because this final truth is for you. The person who wants to marry you was not hidden from you. They were being aligned with you. And now that you've both reached this point, there is nothing left to search for, nothing left to question, only something to continue. Together, step by step, moment by moment, into a future that no longer feels like a possibility, but a reality that has already begun. Quietly, beautifully, and exactly when it was meant to. And just when everything feels settled, listen, there is one last layer unfolding. Not something new, but something deeper than everything you've understood so far. Because now, it's no longer about finding each other. It's about choosing each other, again and again, in ways that go beyond the moment. Feel this. There is a quiet shift happening where connection becomes responsibility. Not heavy, not overwhelming, but meaningful. The kind that says, I see you, and I'm here to build with you. Pause. Because this is where many people misunderstand love. They think the journey ends when clarity arrives. But in truth, this is where the real journey begins. The part where both of you start showing up, not just when it's easy, but because it matters. And here's what makes this different from anything you've experienced before. There is no fear attached to this. No hesitation hiding behind your thoughts. No uncertainty whispering in the background. Instead, there is a calm awareness that says, this is worth everything I'm ready to give. Stay with this moment, because something powerful is forming between you now. A rhythm, a balance, a quiet understanding of how to move forward, together. You'll begin to notice it in the smallest ways. How you both listen more deeply. How you both understand without needing to explain every detail. How even challenges, if they appear, don't break the connection. They strengthen it. And that's when you realize. This is not fragile. This is not temporary. This is something that grows stronger with time. Take a breath. Because this is where love transforms into something lasting, not just a feeling, but a foundation, a shared space where both of you can exist fully, without losing yourselves. And here's the deeper truth you were being guided toward all along. The reason this person was unexpected was because they were never meant to fit into your past. They were meant to create your future. And now, that future is no longer distant. It's forming, right here, in the present moment. Stay a little longer. Because this final realization completes everything. You are not the same person you were when this journey began. You are more aware, more grounded, more aligned with what is real. And because of that, you are now able to hold something real, not just feel it, but build it. And they are standing beside you in that same awareness. No more waiting, no more wondering, just a shared understanding that this connection is not something to question, but something to protect, to grow, to honor. Pause. Because this is the moment where everything becomes clear in the simplest way. You didn't just meet someone unexpected. You met someone right. And now, as both of you move forward from here, there is no need for big promises, no need for perfect words, because what exists between you already says everything. A quiet, steady truth that continues to grow. With every step you take, together, into what is no longer just a possibility, but a life that is already beginning to unfold. And now, before you move forward, pause for just a moment. Because this isn't an ending. It never was. It's something far more powerful than that. It's a realization that stays with you, long after this moment passes. Feel this. Everything you've experienced, every shift, every question, every quiet moment of understanding. It wasn't leading you to a person. It was leading you to a truth that now lives inside you. That love was never meant to confuse you. It was never meant to leave you guessing. It was never meant to feel like something you had to chase or prove. Pause. Because you understand it now, don't you? The person who wants to marry you was not a mystery to solve. They were a connection to recognize, when you were ready to see clearly. And now, you do, not with doubt, not with hesitation, but with a calm, grounded certainty that feels almost effortless. Stay here with this feeling. Because this is what everything was building toward. A space where you no longer question what is real. A space where your heart and your mind finally move in the same direction. And in that space, everything becomes simple. Not easy, but clear. You see them for who they are. You see yourself for who you've become. And you understand why it all unfolded the way it did. No regrets. No confusion. Just alignment. Take a breath. Because this is where something quietly powerful begins. Not a dramatic moment. Not a sudden change. But a steady continuation of everything that now feels right. You move forward together. Not because you have to, but because you choose to. Every day. In small ways. In real ways. In ways that don't need to be seen by the world to be meaningful. And that's what makes this different. Because what you are building is not for appearance. It's not for validation. It's not for anyone else to understand. It's for you. For the life you are creating, side by side. Pause. Because there is one final truth you need to hear. The reason they were unexpected was so you wouldn't limit them. So you wouldn't place them inside an old idea of love. So you could receive something new, something real, something that fits who you are now. And now that you've reached this moment, there is nothing left to figure out, nothing left to search for, only something to live, something to protect, something to grow. And as you step into everything that's ahead, remember this feeling, this clarity, this quiet certainty that doesn't need to be explained, because this is what it feels like when everything finally aligns. And from here, the story doesn't end, it simply continues. In a way that no longer feels uncertain, but feels like exactly where you were always meant to be. And now, something even quieter begins to unfold. Not outside, not between you, but deep within the space you both carry forward together. Because this is the part no one talks about, the part that doesn't appear in obvious moments, but defines everything that comes after. Feel this. The connection is no longer becoming, it is. And when something truly is, it doesn't need constant attention to survive. It doesn't need to be questioned. It doesn't need to be proven again and again. It simply continues, naturally, steadily, quietly. Pause. Because this is where you step into something rare. A connection that feels like it belongs to your life, not just a chapter within it. You may notice how everything feels grounded now. Not intense in a way that overwhelms you, but deep in a way that supports you. Like something you can stand on. Like something that holds you, without holding you back. And here's the truth that completes everything. This is what real commitment feels like. Not a sudden promise. Not a dramatic moment. But a quiet decision that repeats itself, every single day. In the way you both show up. In the way you both listen. In the way you both choose each other, even in the smallest moments. Stay with this. Because this is where love becomes something more than a feeling. It becomes a direction. A path that both of you walk, side by side, with understanding instead of expectation. And now, you no longer need signs. You no longer need confirmation. You no longer need to ask, is this right? Because everything within you already knows. Take a breath. Because this realization carries a kind of peace that doesn't fade. A calm certainty that stays with you, even when everything else changes. And that's when you understand something even deeper. The journey wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about becoming someone who could recognize what is real, and stay with it. And now, you have. Pause. Because this final layer is the one that stays with you long after everything else fades. You are not standing at the beginning anymore. You are not standing at the end either. You are standing in something continuous. Something that grows, not by force, but by presence. And this presence, this quiet, steady connection, becomes the foundation of everything that follows. The life you build, the memories you create, the moments that slowly turn into something lasting. Stay here for one last second. Because this is where everything becomes simple again. Not complicated, not uncertain, just clear. You found each other, not by chance, but by alignment. And now, there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to question, only something to live, fully, honestly, together. And as you move forward from this point, you won't look back and wonder how it all happened. You'll simply feel it as a quiet truth that has always been there, waiting for you to recognize it. And finally, step into it.